The concept of having multiple pages actually bumps the complexity way, way up. One of the questions that's going to arise is how do you pass information between these pages? And we're going to look at a basic example, and I'm going to record this end to end so you can see all my mistakes, and there will be mistakes. Let's say 9.4. This is not an easy topic, and a lot of tutorials try to skip over this and just leave the end user, you, to figure out how to do this for yourself. But we're going to look at a very basic example. What we want to do here, save and run, is we have two pages. First page, I want to be able to edit a value, and then the second page, I want to be able to display that value and be able to seamlessly go back and forth. The first question is going to be, what are we going to do? I'm just going to do it very simple. We're just going to allow you to enter a name or a string of some kind and then pass that back and forth using property bindings. So let's dive in. Actually, let me kill this. All right, first things first. What is the most consistent thing? You guessed it, the main.qml with our app window. So we're going to make a property and then pass that property between these pages. Let's sidebar real quick, and we're going to modify these pages. So we are on page 1, and I'm going to get rid of that so it snaps up there. And I want a column. Let's go ahead and snap that in. Whoops, got the wrong one there. Got a little click happy. There we go. Move that here. This is why I try to shy away from this, because it's so easy to get so screwed up. All right, now that we've got our column here, let's go ahead and modify our spacing. Let's say we want this at 10, and we just want a label and a text field. Drag and drop. Drag and drop. Pretty simple, pretty easy interface here. Say enter your name, and then I'm going to blank the text out on this guy. This has an ID of text field. Because we're going to be passing around a variable, I want to do properties. So I'm going to just make sure the page is selected. I'm going to add a property here. And let's call this name. And this is going to be a little cumbersome. It doesn't like to scroll for me. I'm going to choose an alias, and this does not help us very much. So I'm going to say text field.text. And if you misspell it, you're going to have a bad time. So what I always do is after I've gone in there and done that, I'll go into the actual editor and I'll go up to our property and I'll delete that last little bit and I'll say dot. And if IntelliSense is helping us out, 99% of the time we've spelled everything correctly. If you're ultra paranoid, you can just grab that ID, copy, paste. Remember, a property alias is like a C++ pointer. It's just going to point to something. So if I call name, it's going to actually point to the text field text. Whew. All right. This is what this is going to look like. Save and run. Premise being we'll be able to type something in here and then seamlessly go over here and it'll display. So let's go here. Let's go to our page 2. Grab this guy. I'm going to do a little bit of layout wizardry here. Grab a label, drag drop. It's going to pump it right over there. Not super helpful. And I'm going to put it right here. And we're going to actually type in the word here. There we go. Let's call this something like, I need a good name, a good solid name. My label. Why not? So very descriptive. Let's go ahead and let's do a property alias here. We can do it either via the property editor or we can actually just key it in. Doesn't really matter. And we're going to say my label.text. And as long as your ID lines up, you're good to go. All right, now that we've got those two in there, this is where the fun bit happens. What we need to do is make a property in here and then link it, or I should say bind it. So we're going to say property. This is going to be a string called name. Default value is going to be just blank Once we get that in there, now we need a way of passing this around, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So page 1 is where we're going to edit. So I'm going to say editor, and then display is page 2. That way we don't get confused about what we're talking about here. Now, page 1, what we want to do is we want to actually track when that current index changed. But it's not going to emit a signal. So we're going to say component dot on completed. And we've talked about component briefly, and it's basically going to encapsulate all the functionality of a, shockingly enough, component. So we want to know when that thing's fully loaded, and that is the on completed. So we're going to say the name property equals root, and I actually need to set an ID here. So our window ID is root, and we're going to say we want the root name. So what's going on here is our page 1 form has a property called name, and we want to set that to this one. So we're basically saying set text field.text to the application Windows property called name. Save, run. Let's see what that looks like. Of course, it does absolutely nothing so far, but we can go like this, and it's holding it in memory. Under the hood, what's really happening is when this page form is uncompleted, we're setting this text to whatever that property is. Doesn't really graphically help us out that much. So what I want to do now is kind of scroll down here, and I want to say on current index changed, and we're going to actually console.log. I want to see that actual current index, just so I know what's going on in the background here. And I'm going to say if current index is 1. Remember, this is a 0 base, so this is actually page 2. I'm going to say root dot name page 1 dot name, and then page 2. We got to actually give these IDs. Let's back up here. There we go. That's why it's not working. So page 1. There we go. Now IntelliSense is picking it up. Usually when you're typing and IntelliSense is not helping you out, even if it's badly helping you out, that's when you should be a little afraid. All right, so page 2, we're saying when the current index of the swipe view changes, then we're going to track that. And if it's on page 2, then we're going to say root name equal page 1 name, meaning our editor, and then page 2 name equal root name. Could we do page 2 name equal page 1 name? Yes, but we may start losing that variable. It may go off into Never Never Land, and we don't want to let that happen. And then we're going to say, kind of doing this a little backwards here, we're going to say and we could just to kind of flip this around, do it like that. Doesn't really matter. Save and run. See, there's Brian. And we can actually click here, and it's on there as well. So it doesn't really matter. As long as we've got those property bindings in there, we can pass that data back and forth. This is, I want to say, a convoluted way of doing it. There are much better ways of doing it. Some of those ways of doing it that are much better get way more advanced than what we're talking about in this video series, but I wanted to show you a bare bones basic way of doing simple property bindings and passing data back and forth.